Welcome back, Shadow Dorks. It is I, Grim Games, and today we're going to give you a full step-by-step overview of my latest adventure, The Last Isle of the Dread Legion. As of filming, there's 8 days left in my Kickstarter campaign to help bring this adventure to print. If the Kickstarter campaign's over by the time you're seeing this, use the link down below to see if I have any print overstock available for sale. If anything, the PDFs will be available, and you can always take those to your local print shop and get them printed yourself. Alright, let's go through the 60-page adventure zine. You got your island map keyed above and below ground. Title page, table of contents, small introduction to get to know me a little bit better. Preliminary houses the things you should consider before beginning the adventure. The essentials of the adventure background. The player characters crash on an island occupied by the last remnant of a long-dead orc empire, and they have to find some way off the island or end up on the menu. With this particular adventure, I primarily wrote it with theater of the mind. However, there are maps included if you prefer to use those or do some sort of hybrid between the two. The adventure starts with daylight. However, as you traverse some of the regions, let's say a range designation of like far or something, as you go through a few zones, you should cut to torch time. As a classic starting trope, all the player characters lose their gear. Don't tell them this as they're writing up their characters, go through the whole process and be like, oopsie daisy, you lost everything. But those things can be found within the first few zones if they explore out. Make sure you use the randomized gear for the orcs, because otherwise, if you use what's defaulted in the monster manual, some of those challenges might be a little bit more than what I designed. The headspace for building this is, of course, with like 4 PCs by default, but if you have a larger table, feel free to adjust the encounters as you see fit. I would say on average that this particular adventure will take 1 to 2 sessions to complete, depending on the length of your sessions. Random encounters are pretty straightforward. You either encounter orcs, tropical environment issues, wild fauna, or shipwreck survivors. Rather than having your players immediately roll for rumors as play begins, deal with the initial encounter in Area 1, and then once the dust settles, then roll for rumors. There's a section for optional achievements if you want to add additional XP opportunities to your game. Keep these hidden from your players and only trigger them if they happen to be accomplished. I did a whole video on this with my suggestions on what the XPs for these should be, but use your own judgment at the end of the day. I'll leave a link to this down below. Now onto the adventure. Adventure begins with one random player character at your table waking up being dragged north by an orc. This particular orc is complaining about being left with scraps while the larger warband heads back to base. Within near of this, another orc is muttering speculation about what's inside a locked strongbox that the warband carried home. This piece of information is the player character's first lead on where to go, what to do, because they remember that inside this fancy lockbox, their captain kept all of his fancy documents. He claimed to have a really powerful scroll that could help them escape in a precarious situation. Captain's found dead on the shore though, so maybe he didn't get to it in time, maybe he bumped his head while in the raging storm and wasn't able to read it. Maybe the ship fell apart before he could access it. His strongbox key, normally tied around his neck, is missing. There's talon marks around his chest, signifying that it was stolen by a flying creature. Each new round, a player character wakes up and can join the situation, so the very first character is kind of in a very difficult situation. If they immediately attack the orcs, ooh boy, that could go south real fast. Once the orcs are dealt with and the player characters find one of their backpacks, as well as maybe search other wreckage in the bodies, they have to decide where to go next. Do they proceed up north through the well-worn trail? Do they wish to head west to the beachside cave or the coastal bluff? Or maybe they start to travel east towards the rocky cove. What I would do is read those sections obviously in advance, and then from their position on the shipwreck shore, what could they see from that distance, if anything? If they head west, they'll find the beachside cave. At the top of the bluff, they'll see a large nest. It's harpies. They have the captain's key. Inside the cave, they'll find a wild boar, some treasure, and one of the player characters' backpacks. They'll also find a path inside that cave to climb up to the coastal bluff. Inside the nest, you'll find another player's backpack, as well as the captain's strongbox key. There's also a ring of water breathing hidden in the nest as well. Your players need to be very careful here, because the harpies are very dangerous. That song ability can cause a lot of trouble. Taking the trail north, you'll start to see plenty of evidence of the Dread Legion orcs. They'll get a context clue of what lies to the east in the rocky cove. An investigation of tracks can yield evidence that the band of orcs went to the east and might have engaged with mermaids. If they head north, they enter the jungle wilds. If the player characters decide to visit the rocky cove, they'll find a pod of 7 mermaids frantically engaged in a salvage operation of the largest chunks of your vessel that crashed here in the storm. The mermaids here were recently attacked by the orcs, and the mermaid leader Chintara's younger sister Yoreli has been captured and taken off inland. The pod is now hastily preparing for a rescue mission to find any sort of objects that could help even the odds for a battle outside of their natural domain. It is very likely that Chintara will see the players as a beacon of hope, and will try to negotiate for helping the players get off the island in exchange for saving her sister. And this can be an alternative way to succeed in the adventure. So players can find this intact rowboat and use it to go upstream in this gigantic cave mouth that leads underground into the underground rapids. That's an alternative path. I'll come back to that in a moment. For now, let's say the players head to the jungle wilds. Here, this zone is largely an abstraction and trying not to get lost in this thick foliage. If they succeed their check, they follow the orcs and find the next zone. If they fail, they get lost in the jungle and end up back on the well-worn trail where they might have started. The Bloodright perimeter is a section of the jungle that's experiencing a corrupting, malevolent influence of Ramlot. This becomes very much a Ramlot-influenced survival of the fittest hunting grounds or trial grounds for those of his worshippers. Here, the player characters get their bearings clearly and they can see evidence of the orc base. The traps are one thing, but the ambushing shambling mound that preys upon the weak is another. There's an old chieftain's warhorn here that players might see as just basic normal treasure at first, but they might be able to use it as an interesting tool here very shortly. Once we complete the Bloodright perimeter, we are headed to the Dread Legion Fort if we're going on the overland path. Dread Legion Fort is very much a shadow of its former self after centuries of neglect and infighting. So it's a den of chaos, it's very loud, it's obnoxious, it's constant fighting and bickering. So if the players try to sneak through it and they get caught at one particular angle, it doesn't necessarily mean the entire fort is alerted. Players know that they gotta get to the chief's throne in order to get that strongbox or rescue the mermaid Yoreli. As they're navigating through the base, maybe they overhear orcs complaining about all the loot the chief gets, or maybe they're salivating about eating the mermaid. You decide how the players hear of it, but they know that they gotta get to that throne. However they wish to get to the throne, the fort is abstracted into sort of 3 sections, essentially 2 encounter zones leading to the throne zone. Whether they want to fight through or sneak through, or maybe don a disguise, maybe create some sort of distraction with that warhorn earlier. The Undermountain Lake section we'll cover in a moment actually provides a backdoor way. Once they arrive at the throne area, the PCs will hear Grunach giving a Bloodright sermon. Another feeding frenzy is about to take place. There's a lot of orcs here ready to eat, so this could be very dangerous. But they've already used their rages and they're heavily intoxicated, so they roll all the time with disadvantage, except for the chief and his 2 attendants. There's also a bunch of other captives here, so sneaky players could free them and help even the odds. Or maybe you're just gonna grab the strongbox and get the hell out of there. Inside is a very special scroll that opens up a portal. However, once it's complete, it malshifts into a gate mishap. So you might have a secret boss on your hands if you're not able to close the demon gate at that point. If they discover this hidden calamity, maybe they decide to go with the mermaid option off the island. Rewinding back, an alternative option is to go through the underground rapids. There the encounter table changes, and then it breaks off towards Area 9 and Area 10. Area 9 houses a deadly trap that guards an ancient artifact. If the players solve it without losing their heads, they gain the Flute of the Sea's Wrath. Heading to Area 10, the players will discover a mithril mine. There, drow taskmasters are putting slaves to work mining the mithril ore. There is a path down to the Darklands that goes below the ocean floor, but this is beyond the scope of the adventure. This could be a means of escaping the island, but at what cost? You are entering the drow's domain. It is possible for this contingent of slavers to go get reinforcements from their priestess, and I don't know how the players survive that. Probably best not to tarry. Also, one of the slaves that can be freed is Brunbeck, the Dwergar. He offers you safe passage through the Darklands to his home city, but then plans to betray you. Again, these can be fun options to explore on your own accord, but are outside of the scope of this adventure. Another temptation here, the players could opt to mine mithril ore that they could use to make high-quality gear later on, but the longer they stick around, the more likely it is that the drow priestess and her posse shows up. Mithril mine eventually leads to the Undermountain Lake. Ultimately, this is like the back way into the Dread Legion Fort, getting straight to Grunach's throne. There's also a shrine here to Ramlot, with a really interesting boon in play. If the players sacrifice Chief Grunach here, they can gain the boon of Ramlot themselves, but it comes at a price. Regardless of how you complete Grunach's Throne, there's some additional conclusion bonuses you might want to consider. I like to add an alternate carousing table to all of my adventures. These have expanded ranges to include any carousing bonuses you pick up along the way in the adventure, or if you have player characters like Kelsey's Bard that has the opportunity to expand your range a little bit, these tables will reward you. Rather than Theater of the Mind, if you're more inclined to use maps, here's a litany of them right here. Shipwreck Shore, Beachside Cave, Well-Worn Trail, Rocky Cove, Jungle Wilds, Bloodright Perimeter, Underground Rapids, the Treasure Trove, Mithril Mine with the Drow Slavers, the Winding Tunnels, the Undermountain Lake, the Dread Legion Fort at the gates, within the fort, and then Grunach's Throne. Finally, the zine has a community section which includes my social links, as well as links to all the artist portfolios that are featured within this zine, and then little stingers for some of the other adventures that I'll be working on over the course of this and next year. And that's all for the last Isle of the Dread Legion. Hope you enjoyed this overview. Be sure to support the Kickstarter if you see this in time, or if the campaign's over by the time you see this, check the links down below for additional purchase options. Be sure to smash the like, hit subscribe, comment down below what you enjoyed about this adventure overview, and may your torches never go out.